I, 28F, stood there in my wedding dress. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. The room was beautiful. All our friends and family were there. We had just said our vows. The officiant was about to pronounce us husband and wife. That was when the doors at the back of the church burst open. A woman I had only met a handful of times stormed down the aisle. Her face was a mask of pure rage. She pointed a trembling finger at the man I was about to marry. "Stop this wedding," she screamed. Her voice echoed in the silent church. Everyone turned to look at her. My heart hammered against my ribs. I felt a cold dread wash over me. I did not understand what was happening. I looked at Liam, my almost husband, but his face was unreadable. He just stared at the woman. She took a few more steps forward, her eyes locked on Liam. "You cannot marry her," she declared, her voice cracking with emotion. "You are already married. I am his wife." A wave of gasps spread through the guests. My mother stood up from her seat in the front row, her face pale with shock. My maid of honor, Chloe, took a step toward me, her hand reaching for my arm as if to steady me. I felt like the floor was about to give way beneath my feet. His wife? Liam was married? My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. This had to be a mistake, a cruel joke. I looked at Liam, searching his face for an answer, for any sign that this was not real. He did not look at me. He kept his eyes on the woman who was now standing just a few feet from the altar. She was breathing heavily, her chest rising and falling. Tears streamed down her face, but her eyes were still filled with a burning fury. I felt 100 pairs of eyes on me, on us. The silence was deafening, broken only by the woman's ragged breaths. My dream wedding had turned into a public nightmare. Then, Liam did something I never expected. A small, tired smile touched his lips. It was not a happy smile. It was a smile of resignation, of someone who had seen this movie before and knew exactly how it ended. He turned his head slightly, and his calm eyes met the woman's frantic ones. In a voice that was quiet but carried through the entire church, he said, "Hello, Mother." The air went out of the room. The collective shock was a physical thing, a wave that washed over all of us. The woman, his mother, Vivian, seemed to deflate. The fury in her eyes flickered and was replaced by a look of deep, profound hurt. My own confusion morphed into something else. Something colder and sharper. This was not a random crazy person. This was his mother. And she had just claimed to be his wife in front of everyone we knew. The officiant, a kind man who had been so warm and friendly during our rehearsals, looked utterly lost. He glanced from Liam to Vivian, then to me, his mouth slightly ajar. My father started to move from his seat, ready to intervene, to throw this woman out. But my mother put a hand on his arm, holding him back. Everyone was frozen, waiting to see what would happen next. Vivian just stood there, her accusation hanging in the air, now twisted into something strange and ugly. She had wanted to stop the wedding by claiming to be his wife, and Liam's response had not denied her. It had just recontextualized everything. Liam finally turned to me. His eyes were full of apology, but also a deep, familiar weariness. "Alara, I am so sorry," he whispered, his voice for me alone. I could not find my own voice. I just stared at him, then back at his mother, the woman who was supposed to be my new mother-in-law, the woman who thought she was his wife. The wedding was ruined. That much was clear. But I had a terrifying feeling that the wedding was only the beginning of the problem. What had I just married into? What kind of family was this? The beautiful white dress suddenly felt like a costume in a play I had not known I was a part of. The joy and hope of the morning had evaporated, replaced by a chilling uncertainty. My own mother finally broke the silence. "What is the meaning of this?" she asked, her voice firm and directed at Vivian. Vivian seemed to shrink under my mother's gaze. She looked at Liam, her expression pleading. "Liam, tell them," she whispered, her voice now small and broken. "Tell them they cannot do this to us." Liam closed his eyes for a moment. He took a deep breath, as if gathering his strength. When he opened them, he looked at me and only me. "Can we get out of here?" he asked softly. "Please." I nodded numbly. There was nothing else to do. Chloe rushed to my side, her arm wrapping around my waist. Liam took my hand, his grip tight and desperate. Together, we turned our backs on the altar, on our guests and on his mother, who was now openly sobbing. We walked down the aisle, not as husband and wife celebrated by cheers, but as two people escaping a disaster. The whispers followed us all the way out the door. I did not look back. I was too afraid of what I would see. The limousine that was supposed to take us to our reception was waiting outside. We got in without a word. The driver, sensing the tension, just quietly closed the door. As the car pulled away from the curb, I finally looked at Liam. His face was pale, his jaw tight. "You have to explain," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Now." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I knew meant he was stressed beyond words. "I know," he said. "I am so sorry, Alara. I never wanted you to see that. I never thought she would go this far." "Go this far?" I repeated, my voice gaining strength. "She stood up in our wedding and said she was your wife, Liam. What am I supposed to think?" "She gets confused," he said, the words sounding weak and pathetic even to my own ears. "She's not well. She has these episodes." "Episodes?" I asked, incredulous. "That was not an episode. That was a planned attack. She wanted to humiliate me. She wanted to stop our wedding." "I know how it looked," he said, turning to face me, his eyes pleading for understanding. "But you don't know her. She loves me so much, and sometimes it gets twisted. She sees any other woman in my life as a threat." I stared at him. The excuse felt so thin, so rehearsed. It was the same kind of language he had used before, whenever his mother had been subtly unkind to me, whenever she had made a backhanded comment or tried to exclude me from a family conversation. He always had a reason. She was tired. She was stressed. She did not mean it that way. "A threat?" I said. "Liam, she called herself your wife. Normal mothers don't do that. Normal mothers don't crash their son's wedding and scream that he's already married to them." "My family isn't normal," he said quietly, looking down at his hands. "I know that. I've known that my whole life. I just hoped I could keep it separate. I hoped I could protect you from the worst of it." "Protect me?" I felt a bitter laugh escape my lips. "By not telling me that your mother is delusional? By letting me walk down that aisle completely unprepared for her to blow up our lives in front of 200 people? I didn't think she would do this," he insisted. "She promised she would behave. My father promised he would handle her." His father, Arthur. A quiet, passive man who always seemed to orbit Vivian, catering to her moods and smoothing over her sharp edges. I had thought he was simply henpecked. Now I wondered if he was something else entirely. An enabler. "So this has happened before?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "She's done things like this to other women you've dated?" Liam hesitated. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. That silence was my answer. It told me everything I needed to know. This was not a one-time event. This was a pattern. A pattern he had deliberately hidden from me. "Yes," he finally admitted, his voice so low I could barely hear it. "But never this public. Never this extreme." I leaned back against the leather seat, the white silk of my dress feeling cold against my skin. The man I had just married was a stranger. He had a whole secret life, a whole secret family dynamic that he had carefully concealed from me. He had allowed me to believe that his mother was just a little overbearing, a little clingy. The reality was so much darker, so much more twisted. "Take me home," I said to the driver, my voice flat. Not to our new apartment that we were supposed to move into after the honeymoon. To my old apartment. The one I still had the lease on for another month. Liam's head snapped up. What? No, Alara, please. We can talk about this. We can fix this. I don't want to talk anymore, Liam, I said, turning to look out the window at the city passing by. I want to be alone. I need to think. Please don't do this, he begged, reaching for my hand. I pulled it away. You lied to me, I said, my voice cold. You lied by not telling me the truth. You let me walk into that church completely blind. You let your mother humiliate me and my family, and you stood there and acted like it was just another Tuesday for you. It's not like that, he protested. It is exactly like that, I shot back, finally looking at him. The anger was starting to burn through the shock. Your first reaction wasn't to defend me. It wasn't to tell her she was wrong. It was to calmly say, "Hello, Mother," like a son greeting his mom after school. You are so used to her insanity that you can't even see it anymore. He had no answer for that. He just sat there, his shoulders slumped in defeat. The rest of the ride was silent. When the car pulled up to my apartment building, I got out without a word. Alara, wait, he called after me. I stopped and turned. I need time, Liam. I don't know what this means for us. I don't even know who you are right now. I walked into my building and did not look back. My phone was already buzzing incessantly. Texts and missed calls from my parents, from Chloe, from dozens of wedding guests. I ignored them all. I walked into my small, familiar apartment, the one that was supposed to be a memory by tonight. The silence was a relief. I leaned against the closed door, my beautiful wedding dress now feeling like a heavy shroud. And for the first time since his mother had screamed those insane words, I let myself cry. The tears were not just for the ruined wedding. They were for the marriage that felt like it was already over before it had even begun. I had been betrayed, not by a secret affair, but by a secret family, and I had no idea how deep the rot went. The next morning, I woke up on my couch. I was still in my wedding dress. My neck was stiff and my head ached. The events of the previous day came rushing back, a tidal wave of humiliation and confusion. My phone lay on the coffee table, its screen dark. It had run out of battery, a small mercy. I plugged it in and watched it come to life, immediately flooded with notifications. Dozens of texts, voicemails, missed calls from Liam, my parents, his father. I ignored Liam's calls for now. I needed to talk to someone who was on my side, someone with an outside perspective. I called Chloe. She picked up on the first ring. Oh my God, Alara. Are you okay? Where are you? I'm at my old place, I said, my voice hoarse. I don't know what I am. I'm coming over, she said immediately. Don't move. I'll bring coffee and bagels. Chloe, you don't have to, I started. Yes, I do, she said firmly. You're my best friend and your wedding just got blown up by a crazy person. I'm coming over, 10 minutes. She hung up before I could protest further. I was grateful. I felt so utterly alone. While I waited, I scrolled through the texts. My mom was worried sick. My dad was furious. A few friends were sending messages of support, telling me they were thinking of me and how awful the whole thing was. Then I saw a text from a number I didn't recognize. It read, I know you must be confused. Vivian has done this before. If you want to talk, call me. Carol. Carol? Liam's aunt. His mother's sister. I had met her only twice, at a family barbecue and at the rehearsal dinner. She had seemed quiet, kind, and a little sad. Why was she texting me? What did she mean? Vivian had done this before? Liam had admitted as much, but hearing it from someone else, from a member of his own family, made it feel more real, more sinister. I saved the number but didn't reply yet. Chloe arrived, true to her word, with a large coffee for me and a bag of food. She took one look at me. still in my rumpled wedding dress, and her face softened with pity. "Oh, honey," she said, pulling me into a hug. "First things first, let's get you out of this dress." She helped me unzip the back, and I stepped out of the yards of silk and lace, letting it pool on the floor like a fallen cloud. I changed into sweatpants and a t-shirt, the simple cotton a comfort against my skin. We sat on the couch, and I told her everything. About Liam's weak excuses, his tired resignation, my decision to come back to my old apartment. "He said she has episodes," I finished, sipping the hot coffee. "He said she gets confused." Chloe snorted. "Confused? That woman knew exactly what she was doing. I saw her before the ceremony started. She was lurking near the back, watching everyone. She had this look on her face, like a predator." "You saw her?" I asked. "Yeah," Chloe said. I thought it was weird. I went over and asked if she needed help finding her seat. She just stared at me and said, "I know where I belong." It was creepy. I should have told you. I'm so sorry, Alara. "It's not your fault," I said, shaking my head. "None of this is your fault. It's Liam's. He should have warned me. He should have told me the truth about her." "So, what are you going to do?" she asked gently. "I don't know," I admitted. Part of me wants to just get an annulment and run as far away from that family as I can. But another part of me, I love him, Chloe. Or at least, I love the man I thought he was. I need to understand what's really going on. That was when I remembered the text from his aunt. I showed it to Chloe. Her eyes widened as she read it. "Whoa, Vivian has done this before." "Alara, you have to call her." "I know," I said. "I'm just scared of what I'll find out." "You need to know," Chloe insisted. "You can't make any decisions until you have the whole truth. Liam isn't giving it to you. Maybe she will." I knew she was right. I took a deep breath and looked at my phone. I had dozens of missed calls from Liam, and 3 from his father, Arthur. I decided to start there. Maybe Arthur could shed some light on things before I talked to Carol. I needed to hear the official family story first. I called him back. He answered immediately. "Alara, thank goodness. Are you all right? We've all been so worried." His voice was smooth and practiced, the voice of a man used to cleaning up messes. "I'm not all right, Arthur," I said, keeping my tone even. "Your wife ruined my wedding and publicly humiliated my family and me." I know," he said, his voice dripping with synthetic sympathy. "And we are so terribly sorry. Vivian she's beside herself with remorse. She didn't know what she was saying." "She seemed to know exactly what she was saying," I countered. "She said she was Liam's wife." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Ah, yes," he said, clearing his throat. "That? You must understand, Alara. Vivian's health has not been good. She gets these ideas. She loves Liam so fiercely, sometimes her mind plays tricks on her. She sees him as her whole world, and the idea of sharing him is very difficult for her. It was the same script Liam had used. She's not well. She gets confused. They had clearly coordinated their stories. So this is a medical issue?" I pressed. "Is she seeing a doctor for these ideas?" Another hesitation. "We are managing it as a family," he said vaguely. "It's a delicate situation. What she needs is patience and understanding, not doctors who will pump her full of drugs." I felt a chill run down my spine. They weren't getting her help. They were enabling her. They were all trapped in this toxic bubble together, and they had just dragged me into it. "Liam told me this has happened before," I said, my voice hardening, "with his other girlfriends. There have been minor misunderstandings," Arthur admitted carefully. "Vivian is very protective. She has high standards for her son. But nothing like this. This was, I admit, a terrible lapse in judgment on her part. She is deeply ashamed." I didn't believe him. Not for a second. There was nothing ashamed about the way Vivian had stormed down that aisle. That was an act of war. I need to know what I'm dealing with, Arthur, I said. Is this going to be my life now? Am I going to have to spend my marriage looking over my shoulder, waiting for my mother-in-law to have another episode? Of course not, he said quickly, his tone placating. This was a wake-up call for all of us. Things will be different now. I will make sure of it. Vivian will apologize. We will make this right. Just please talk to Liam. He loves you so much. He's devastated. We talked for a few more minutes, but he just kept repeating the same empty promises. It was all about protecting Vivian, managing her, smoothing things over. Not once did he truly acknowledge the damage she had done to me, to Liam, to our wedding day. After I hung up, I felt colder than ever. They were a united front, the three of them, and I was the outsider, the problem to be managed. Chloe had been listening to my side of the conversation, her expression growing more and more concerned. They're gaslighting you, she said the moment I ended the call. She's not well. It's a delicate situation. They're making excuses for her abusive behavior and trying to make you feel like you're the one who's overreacting. I know, I said, and it's working. I almost felt sorry for them for a second. Don't, she said fiercely. They don't deserve your pity. They deserve to be held accountable. Call the aunt. Call Carol. It's time to get the real story. I picked up my phone again. My hand was shaking slightly as I found Carol's number. This was it. This was the moment I stepped outside the carefully constructed narrative the family had built. I pressed the call button, my heart pounding in my chest. It felt like I was about to pull a thread that could unravel everything. And a part of me was terrified of what I would find. Carol answered on the second ring. Her voice was softer, more hesitant than her brother-in-law's. Hello? Hi, Carol. This is Ilara, I said. You texted me. Oh, Ilara, yes, I'm so glad you called, she said, and I could hear the genuine relief in her voice. First, let me just say how truly sorry I am for what happened at your wedding. It was monstrous. No one deserves that. Her sincerity was a stark contrast to Arthur's slick apologies. I felt myself relax a little. Thank you, I said. I appreciate that. I'm sure you have a lot of questions, she said, and I'm sure my sister and her husband have been feeding you their usual stories. She's not well, I quoted, my voice dry. Carol let out a short, bitter laugh. That's the one. She's not well. They've been using that excuse for 30 years. It's their get-out-of-jail-free card for every terrible thing she does. You said in your text that she's done this before? I said, getting straight to the point. What did you mean? There was a heavy sigh on the other end of the line. Ilara, my sister is not just unwell. She is deeply, pathologically possessive of her son. She has systematically sabotaged every romantic relationship he has ever had. Every single one. The words hung in the air between us. Systematically sabotaged. This was not random drama. This was a campaign. How? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. It starts subtly, Carol explained. Backhanded compliments, making the girlfriend feel unwelcome, forgetting to invite her to family things. Then it escalates. She'll invent stories. She told one girl, a lovely young woman named Sarah, that Liam was still in love with his high school sweetheart. She told another one that Liam had a secret gambling problem. I felt sick to my stomach. Chloe reached over and squeezed my hand, offering silent support. And if that doesn't work? Carol continued, her voice heavy with disgust. She goes for the kill. With Sarah, when Liam was about to propose, Vivian called Sarah's parents and told them that Liam was sterile and had been hiding it from their daughter. It was a complete lie, of course. But it worked. The parents panicked. Sarah was devastated and they broke up. Oh my God, I breathed. That was beyond cruel. It was psychotic. And Liam? I asked, my voice trembling. What does he do? Does he know she does these things? He knows, Carol said, and there was a note of sadness in her voice now. But he's been conditioned his whole life to make excuses for her, to believe that it all comes from a place of love. Arthur is just as bad. He enables her, cleans up her messes, and convinces Liam that they have to present a united front to protect her fragile state. It's a prison, Alara, and Liam is a prisoner who doesn't even know he's locked up. It all clicked into place. Liam's tired resignation, his weak excuses, his immediate instinct to manage the situation rather than confront it. He had been dealing with this his entire life. He was a victim in his own right, but he was also complicit. He had allowed it to continue, and he had knowingly dragged me into it without a word of warning. The wife thing, I said, needing to understand the most bizarre part of it all. Where did that come from? That's her favorite line of attack when she feels truly threatened, Carol said grimly. She did it to his college girlfriend, Amy. Liam and Amy were talking about moving in together. Vivian cornered Amy in the kitchen at Christmas and told her, "You need to understand something. I will always be the most important woman in his life. I am his true partner. In his heart, I am his wife." Amy told Liam what she said, and he just brushed it off as Vivian being poetic and overly emotional. Amy broke up with him a week later. Poetic. The word was so absurd, so completely disconnected from the venomous reality of what Vivian had said. Liam wasn't just a victim. He was in denial. A deep, profound denial that protected him from having to face the truth about his mother. So when she screamed it at the wedding, I trailed off. She was declaring war. Carol finished for me. She was telling you and everyone else that you were an imposter, that she was the rightful one. In her twisted mind, she believes it. You are the biggest threat she has ever faced because you actually got him to the altar. So she used her nuclear option. I sat in silence for a long moment, processing everything Carol had told me. The puzzle pieces were all there now, and they formed a picture that was more horrifying than I could have imagined. I was not just married to Liam. I was married into a toxic system, a web of lies and manipulation spun by his mother and enabled by his father and, in his own way, by Liam himself. "Thank you, Carol," I said finally, my voice stronger now. The confusion was gone, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. "You have no idea how much this has helped me. You need to be careful, Alara," she warned. "They will try to pull you back in. They will promise things will change. They will try to make you feel guilty. Don't fall for it. Nothing will change unless Liam is willing to break free. And I've been waiting my whole life to see him do that." After we hung up, I looked at Chloe. "I know what I have to do," I said. My phone started ringing again. It was Liam. This time, I answered. "Alara, thank God," he said, his voice ragged with relief. "I've been calling you for hours. I was so worried. Can I please see you? We need to talk." "Yes," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "We do. Meet me at our new apartment in an hour." "Our apartment?" he asked, sounding surprised but hopeful. "Yes. Of course. I'll be there. Alara, I love you. We can fix this." "We'll see," I said, and I hung up the phone. Chloe looked at me, her eyes wide. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to give him one chance," I said, standing up and walking towards the bedroom to change. One chance to tell me the whole truth. Not his mother's version, not his father's version. The real truth. And then I'm going to give him a choice. "A choice?" she asked. I stopped in the doorway and looked back at her. He can choose his mother, or he can choose me, but he can't have both. I arrived at the new apartment a few minutes before Liam. The place was full of boxes, half unpacked. Our new life, waiting to begin, now felt like a mausoleum. Everything we had bought together, every piece of furniture we had picked out, seemed tainted by the lie he had been living. I walked through the rooms, the silence amplifying the turmoil in my mind. When Liam arrived, he looked terrible. His eyes were red-rimmed and he hadn't shaved. He was still wearing the suit from the wedding, now rumpled and sad. He was holding a small bouquet of flowers, which looked completely out of place in the middle of all this chaos. "Ilara," he said, his voice thick with emotion. He tried to hand me the flowers. I didn't take them. I just crossed my arms and looked at him. "Save it, Liam." He let his hand drop, the flowers hanging limply by his side. "Okay," he said softly. "You're angry. I get it. I deserve it." "Angry doesn't even begin to cover it," I said, my voice steady. "I'm not here to yell at you. I'm here for the truth. The real truth. No more stories about your mother being unwell or confused. I want to know everything." He flinched, but he nodded. "Okay, you're right. You deserve that." We sat down on one of the unpacked sofas, the plastic still covering the cushions. For a moment, we just sat in silence. I could see the conflict on his face. He was wrestling with a lifetime of conditioning. "Her name was Sarah," I said quietly, deciding to help him along. "The one you were going to propose to." His head shot up, his eyes wide with shock. How did you know about Sarah?" "I know about Amy, too," I continued, my voice cold as ice. "I know your mother told Sarah you were sterile. I know she told Amy that in your heart she was your wife. I know that she has systematically destroyed every serious relationship you've ever had. And I know that you let her." Liam looked like I had physically struck him. He stared at me, his mouth opening and closing, but no words came out. The carefully constructed wall of denial he had lived behind for so long was crumbling before my eyes. "Who told you?" he finally whispered. "Does it matter?" I asked. "Is it true?" He looked down at his hands, unable to meet my eyes. He nodded slowly. "Yes," he admitted, his voice cracking. "It's all true." "Then why, Liam?" I asked, and now my voice was shaking, not with anger, but with a deep, profound hurt. "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me walk into that church? Did you think she would magically be different with me? Did you think I was strong enough to handle it? Or did you just not care if I got hurt?" "No," he said, looking up at me, his eyes filled with tears. "Of course I cared. I was a coward. I was so scared of losing you. I thought if we were married, she would have to accept it. She would have to finally back down. I was so stupid." "You weren't stupid, Liam. You were selfish," I said, the words sharp and precise. "You used our marriage as a shield. You put me on the front lines of a war you've been losing your whole life, and you didn't even give me a weapon." "I know," he sobbed, burying his face in his hands. "I know. I'm so sorry, Ilara. I'm so, so sorry." I let him cry. I watched him, my heart a tangled mess of pity and fury. I did love him, but the man I loved was supposed to be my partner, my equal. Not a broken boy who couldn't stand up to his own mother. After a few minutes, he composed himself, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "What Carol told you. It's only part of the story," he said quietly. My ears perked up. "Carol?" So he knew who I had talked to. "What's the rest of it?" "It's not just about her being possessive," he said, his voice low. "It's about my father. My grandfather, his dad, left my grandmother for a younger woman when my dad was a teenager. It destroyed his mother. My dad has spent his entire life terrified of the same thing happening to him. He thinks that by letting my mother have complete control over me, he's keeping her happy. He thinks he's preventing her from ever leaving him. He sees her obsession with me as a good thing. It keeps her focused. It keeps her home." The final piece of the puzzle slotted into place. Arthur wasn't just an enabler. He was an architect of the whole sick system. He actively encouraged his wife's emotional incest to secure his own marriage. The dysfunction was generational. "So you've all just been sacrificing your life to keep their marriage together?" I asked, horrified. "I didn't see it that way until now," he said, his voice filled with a dawning self-awareness. "It was just normal. It was how we lived. Protect Mom. Keep her happy. Don't rock the boat. I never realized that the boat was sinking, and I was the one holding everyone underwater. We sat in silence again, the weight of his confession filling the empty room. It was worse than I thought. So much worse. Finally, I stood up. I'm glad you told me the truth, Liam. I really am. But it doesn't change anything. In fact, it makes it worse. He looked up at me, his face etched with fear. What do you mean? I can't live like this, I said, my voice firm. I will not be a casualty in your family's psychodrama. I will not spend my life fighting your mother for my husband's affection. I will not walk on eggshells to appease a woman who is, for all intents and purposes, mentally and emotionally abusive. And I will not be with a man who is not strong enough to protect me from it. I can change, he said desperately, standing up to face me. I will change. I see it now, Alara. I see everything clearly for the first time. Please just give me a chance to prove it to you. Words are not enough, Liam, I said. I need action. I need to know that you are truly 100% on my side, that we are a team and that our marriage comes first, before your mother, before your father, before their twisted arrangement. It does, he insisted. I swear to you, it does. Then prove it, I said. I'm going to give you a choice, and your decision will determine whether this marriage has a future or whether we get an annulment tomorrow. He paled, but he nodded. Okay, anything. What is it? I took a deep breath. This was it, the point of no return. You and I are going to go to your parents' house, I said, and you are going to confront them. You are going to tell your mother that her behavior was unacceptable and that it will never happen again. You are going to tell your father that his enabling is over. And you are going to tell both of them that until they agree to get professional help, both individually and as a couple, they are out of our lives. No calls, no visits, no contact whatsoever. You are going to set a boundary, and you are going to hold it. Liam stared at me, his face a mixture of terror and resolve. I could see the war going on inside him, a lifetime of obedience fighting against the hope of a future with me. And if they refuse? He asked, his voice trembling. Then the boundary stands, I said. You choose us. You choose our life. You cut them off until they are willing to change. That is the only way this works. That is the only way I will stay. He looked at me for a long, agonizing moment. I held his gaze, my expression unwavering. I would not back down. I could not. My entire future depended on this. Finally, he took a deep, shuddering breath and nodded. Okay, he said, his voice firmer than I had ever heard it. Okay, let's go. The drive to his parents' house was the longest 20 minutes of my life. Liam was silent, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles were white. I could feel the tension radiating from him. He was preparing for the biggest battle of his life. I reached over and placed my hand on his. He glanced at me, and I gave him a small, reassuring nod. We were a team now, or at least, we were about to find out if we could be. When we pulled up to the pristine suburban house he grew up in, I felt a knot of anxiety tighten in my stomach. This was the place where the poison had started. This was the heart of the sickness. Liam took a key from his pocket and unlocked the front door. They'll be in the living room, he said, his voice low. They always are. We walked in. The house was immaculate, almost sterile. Not a thing was out of place. It felt like a museum, not a home. Just as he predicted, Vivian and Arthur were sitting in the living room. Vivian was on the sofa, a tissue clutched in her hand, her eyes red and swollen. Arthur was in his armchair, reading the newspaper as if nothing had happened. They both looked up as we entered. Vivian's face crumpled with relief when she saw Liam. Oh, Liam, darling, she cried, standing up and rushing towards him. You came back. I was so worried. Is she making you do this? She shot me a look of pure venom. Liam did something I had never seen him do before. He held up a hand, stopping her in her tracks. "Sit down, Mom," he said, his voice firm. "We need to talk. All of us." Vivian looked stunned. She slowly backed away and sank back onto the sofa. Arthur lowered his newspaper, a frown creasing his forehead. "What's this all about, son? I thought we agreed we would handle this privately." "We're done handling things privately, Dad," Liam said, his voice gaining strength with every word. He stood tall, with me right beside him, our shoulders almost touching. We were a united front. "What happened yesterday was the end. It's over." "What's over?" Vivian asked, her voice trembling. "What are you talking about?" "This," Liam said, gesturing around the room at the two of them, at the suffocating silence. "This dynamic, the lies, the manipulation, the idea that my life, my happiness is secondary to your feelings." Vivian gasped, placing a hand over her heart. "How can you say that? Everything I've ever done has been for you. I love you more than life itself." "No," Liam said, and his voice was raw with a lifetime of pain. "You don't love me. You possess me. You see me as an extension of yourself, not as a separate person. You have sabotaged every relationship I have ever had because you cannot stand the thought of me having a life that doesn't revolve around you." Arthur stood up, his face flushing with anger. "Now, that's enough, Liam. You will not speak to your mother that way. She is fragile." "She is not fragile." Liam's voice boomed through the room, making both of his parents jump. I had never heard him raise his voice before. "She is a bully. And you," he said, turning to his father, "are her enabler. You have let this go on for my entire life because you are too much of a coward to deal with your own marital problems. You have sacrificed my well-being to keep her from leaving you." Arthur paled, sinking back into his chair as if the words had physically pushed him down. The truth, spoken so plainly, had shattered his carefully maintained facade. Vivian started to sob, real, racking sobs this time. "This is her," she shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at me. "She's done this. She's turned you against me. I knew she was a poisonous little snake the moment I met her." I stood my ground, my expression calm. I didn't need to say a word. This was Liam's fight. "Ilara has done nothing but show me what a healthy relationship looks like," Liam said, his voice now calm and measured. "She has shown me what it's like to be with someone who supports me, instead of trying to control me. She is my wife, and our marriage comes first." He took my hand, his fingers lacing with mine. It was a simple gesture, but it felt monumental. "So here's what's going to happen," Liam continued, looking from his mother to his father. "You are both going to get professional help. Mom, you need to see a therapist to deal with your issues of control and emotional enmeshment. And Dad, you need to see someone to understand why you have enabled this behavior for 30 years. And you need to go to marriage counseling together." Vivian stared at him, her mouth agape. "Therapy? You want to send me to a shrink? There is nothing wrong with me." "That's not up for debate," Liam said firmly. "Until you both get help, and I mean real sustained help, you are out of our lives. No phone calls, no visits, no emails, no contact through other relatives. Nothing. You will not be a part of our life until you are healthy." "You can't do that," Vivian whispered, her face ashen. "You can't cut me off. I'm your mother." "I can," Liam said, his voice filled with a sad finality. "And I will. The choice is yours. You can get help and maybe, someday, have a real relationship with your son and his wife. Or you can continue like this and have no relationship with him at all." He looked at me. "Are we done?" I nodded. "We're done." We turned and walked towards the door. "Liam, wait!" Vivian screamed, scrambling to her feet. "Don't leave me, please, I'll do anything." Liam paused at the door but didn't turn around. "Get help, Mom," he said softly. That's all I've ever wanted. And then we walked out, closing the door on the wreckage of his childhood. As we got into the car, Liam finally let out the breath he had been holding. He leaned his head against the steering wheel, his shoulders shaking. I reached over and put my arm around him. He wasn't crying from sadness. He was crying from relief. The relief of a prisoner who had just been set free. The weeks that followed were strange and quiet. We moved into our new apartment, unpacking the boxes and slowly building a home together. It felt different now. The air was clearer. Liam was different. A weight had been lifted from him that I hadn't even realized he was carrying. He smiled more. He laughed from his belly. He was more present, more engaged. He was the man I had fallen in love with, but a better, freer version. He started going to therapy on his own once a week. He told me it was hard. He was unlearning a lifetime of bad habits and toxic beliefs. But he was committed to it. He was doing the work, for himself and for us. There was no word from his parents, no calls, no texts. It was a complete and total silence. Part of me wondered if they would ever reach out, if they were actually getting the help Liam had demanded. Another part of me didn't care. The peace was so profound, I was almost afraid to break it. About a month after the confrontation, I got a call from Carol. I just wanted to check in, she said. And to tell you something, I had lunch with my sister yesterday. My stomach clenched. Oh? She's a wreck, Carol said, and there was no pity in her voice, only a statement of fact. Arthur finally gave her an ultimatum of his own. He told her that what Liam said was right, that their marriage was a sham, and that he couldn't live like that anymore. He told her to get therapy, or he was leaving. I was stunned. Arthur said that? Apparently hearing Liam say it all out loud was the wake-up call he needed, Carol said. He saw the whole pathetic mess for what it was. So Vivian started seeing a psychiatrist last week. Arthur is in his own therapy. They're even on a waiting list for a marriage counselor. I didn't know what to say. I had never expected them to actually do it. Don't get your hopes up too high, Carol warned, as if reading my mind. This is just the first step on a very long road. And she's only doing it because she's scared of losing both her husband and her son in one fell swoop. But it's a start. It is, I agreed. Thank you for telling me, Carol. You did a good thing, Alara, she said before hanging up. You saved him. And maybe, just maybe, you saved them too. I told Liam what Carol had said. He was quiet for a long time, processing the news. I'm glad they're getting help, he said finally. But it doesn't change the boundary. Not yet. They have to do the work. They have to earn back our trust. I was so proud of him in that moment. He wasn't falling back into old patterns. He was holding the line. He was protecting us. Our life began to find its own rhythm. We had friends over for dinner. We went on weekend trips. We had a small private ceremony with my parents and Chloe and a few close friends to bless our marriage, to reclaim it from the disaster of our first wedding day. It was simple and beautiful and full of love. It was everything our first wedding should have been. Months passed. It was almost a year after the wedding. We were happy. Truly, deeply happy. We had built a life for ourselves, a sanctuary, free from the toxicity that had almost destroyed us before we even began. One day, a letter arrived in the mail. It was addressed to both of us. The return address was his parents' house. I looked at Liam, my heart beating a little faster. Do you want to open it? I asked. He nodded. Together. He slid open the envelope and unfolded the single sheet of paper inside. It was a handwritten letter in his mother's elegant script. Dear Liam and Alara, it began. I am writing this letter because I have no right to call you. A year of therapy has taught me many things, but the most important is this. I was wrong. The way I behaved was not love. It was a sickness. I was a cruel, selfish, and deeply unwell woman. I caused both of you an unimaginable amount of pain. And for that, I am truly deeply sorry. My eyes scanned the page, taking in the words. They were simple, direct, and free of the usual manipulative drama. I do not expect your forgiveness, the letter continued. I have not earned it, but I wanted you to know that I am trying to change. Your father and I are working hard on our marriage and on ourselves. We are learning how to be healthy people, and maybe someday healthy parents. If you are ever willing, I would like the chance to apologize to you in person, Alara. Not to make excuses, but to take full responsibility for the humiliation I put you through. If you are not, I understand. Whatever you decide, I want you to know that I wish you both a lifetime of the happiness you deserve. The happiness I tried to take from you. It was signed simply, Vivian. I looked up at Liam. His eyes were glistening with unshed tears. What do you think? He asked, his voice thick. I thought about the woman who had stormed down the aisle, her face twisted with rage. I thought about the pain and chaos she had caused. And then I thought about the woman who had written this letter. The woman who was finally, after all these years, taking responsibility. I think, I said slowly, that maybe someday we can have coffee with her, in a public place. A single tear rolled down Liam's cheek, but he was smiling. It was a real smile, a smile of hope. He reached for my hand. I love you, he said. I love you too, I replied. Our marriage had been forged in fire. We had faced the worst on our very first day, and we had survived. We had fought for our love, for our sanity, for our future. We had drawn a line in the sand and defended it together. The road ahead might still have its challenges, but I knew we could face them. Because we were a team. He was finally my husband. But first, he had to divorce his mother. And in doing so, he had finally become the man he was always meant to be. Our real life, the one we chose and fought for, was just beginning. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Liam continued with his therapy, and so did I. We found that talking to a neutral third party was incredibly helpful for navigating the complex emotions that the whole ordeal had stirred up. We were building a marriage on a foundation of honesty and communication, things Liam had never experienced in his family of origin. We learned to talk about everything, even the uncomfortable things. We created our own definition of family, one based on respect and healthy boundaries, not on obligation and control. About 6 months after we received Vivian's letter, Liam came home from work with a thoughtful expression on his face. I was thinking, he said, sitting down next to me on the sofa, about my mom's letter. What about it? I asked, putting my book down. You said, maybe someday we could have coffee with her, he said tentatively. I was wondering if someday is now. I considered it. 1.5 years had passed since the wedding. 1.5 years of silence, of healing, of building our own life. The thought of seeing Vivian again didn't fill me with the same dread it once would have. I was no longer the scared, confused bride. I was a woman who knew her own strength, who knew her husband had her back completely. Are you ready for that? I asked him. Because we only do it if we're both 100% ready. I think I am, he said. I don't need a relationship with her like we had before. I don't think I'll ever be able to have that. But I need to see for myself if she's really changed. I need to know if there's a chance for something new, something healthier. Okay, I said, taking his hand. Let's do it. But we set the terms. Public place, 1 hour max. And if at any point either of us feels uncomfortable, we get up and leave. No questions asked. Deal, he said, squeezing my hand. Liam called her that evening. I could only hear his side of the conversation, but it was calm and direct. He laid out the terms just as we had discussed. There was a long pause after he spoke. And I imagined Vivian on the other end, perhaps fighting the urge to argue or manipulate. But then Liam said, Okay, Saturday at 10 at the Daily Grind. We'll see you then. He hung up and looked at me. She agreed, he said, a note of surprise in his voice. She didn't argue. She just said, Thank you for the opportunity. I'll be there. Saturday morning arrived, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't nervous. As we walked into the coffee shop, I scanned the room. She was already there, sitting at a small table in the corner. She looked different. Thinner, maybe. Her hair was cut shorter. She wasn't wearing her usual flashy jewelry or designer clothes. She was dressed simply, in a sweater and slacks. When she saw us, she stood up, but she didn't move towards us. She just waited, her hands clasped nervously in front of her. We approached the table. "Hello, Vivian," I said, my voice polite but neutral. "Hello, Alara." "Liam," she said, her voice quiet. "Thank you for coming." We sat down. The silence was awkward for a moment before Liam broke it. "How have you been, Mom?" "I've been working," she said. "In therapy. It's the hardest work I've ever done." She looked directly at me, her eyes clear and for the first time since I'd met her, seemingly free of any artifice. "Alara, I know I said this in my letter, but I need to say it to your face. I am sorry. What I did to you was cruel and unforgivable. It came from a very sick place inside of me, a place full of fear and insecurity. That's not an excuse, it's just the truth. I was wrong, and I am deeply, deeply ashamed." I listened to her words, searching for any hint of manipulation, any trace of the old Vivian. I couldn't find it. All I saw was a woman who seemed humbled, broken, and trying to piece herself back together. "Thank you for saying that," I said simply. "I appreciate the apology." We talked for the full hour. She asked us about our apartment, about our jobs. She didn't pry. She didn't offer unsolicited advice. She just listened. She talked a little about her therapy, about the things she was learning about herself and her marriage to Arthur. She mentioned that he was also still in therapy, and that it was changing their relationship for the better. "We're learning to talk to each other," she said with a small, sad smile. "For the first time in 40 years, we're getting to know each other as people, not just as props in each other's dramas." When the hour was up, Liam looked at his watch. "Well, we should get going," he said. Vivian nodded, a flicker of disappointment in her eyes, but she didn't protest. "Of course," she said, standing up when we did. "Thank you again for meeting me. It meant a lot." As we were about to walk away, she said my name. "Ilara." I turned. "Yes?" "He's a good man," she said, looking at her son with a newfound clarity. "You're good for him. I see that now." It was the closest thing to a blessing she had ever given, and it was more than I had ever expected to receive. I nodded. "I know he is," I said, and then we left. As we walked out into the sunshine, Liam was quiet. "How are you feeling?" I asked him. "Hopeful?" he said, and the words seemed to hang in the air, bright and full of possibility. For the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful about them. That coffee meeting was the first of many small steps. We established a new kind of relationship with his parents. It was cautious and bounded. We would see them for a meal every month or so. The conversations were polite, surface level. There was no more drama, no more emotional manipulation. It was normal. It was the kind of boring, distant relationship I imagined many people had with their in-laws. And it was a million times better than what we'd had before. Liam and I continued to grow stronger as a couple. We bought a house, we adopted a dog, we traveled. We built a life that was entirely our own on our own terms. The memory of our wedding day never fully faded, but it no longer had the power to hurt me. It was just a part of our story. The fiery crucible that had tested our love and ultimately made it stronger. One evening, about 3 years after the wedding, we were sitting on our porch, watching the sunset. Liam turned to me, a serious look on his face. "I want to renew our vows," he said. I smiled. "We already did that, remember? That little ceremony with my parents." "I know," he said. "But I want to do it again. Just the two of us. I want to stand in front of you, with no one else there. And I want to say the words I should have said that day. The words of a man who chooses you, freely and completely above all others. Tears welled in my eyes. Okay, I whispered. I'd like that. A week later, we went to a quiet spot by a lake that we loved. We didn't have fancy clothes or an officiant. It was just us. We stood facing each other, the setting sun casting a golden glow on the water. He took my hands. Elara, he began, his voice thick with emotion. 3 years ago, I made promises to you that I wasn't yet strong enough to keep. I promised to forsake all others, but I hadn't yet forsaken the toxic hold of my past. Today, I stand before you as a different man, a man who has done the work to be worthy of your love, a man who knows without a shadow of a doubt that you are my family. You are my home. You are my partner in all things. I choose you. Today, and every day for the rest of my life. I was crying freely now. Happy tears. When it was my turn, I looked into the eyes of the man I loved, the man who had fought his demons and won. Liam, I said, my voice choked with emotion. I fell in love with a man who had a good heart, even if he didn't know how to use it to protect himself. And now, I am married to a man who is as strong as he is kind. A man who has shown me what true partnership means. You are my rock, my love, and my greatest adventure. I chose you then, and I choose you now, forever and always. We kissed, and it felt more real, more profound than our first kiss at the altar. It was a kiss that sealed not just a marriage, but a victory. We had made it. We had taken the ugliest beginning imaginable and turned it into a beautiful life. The ghosts of the past were finally at rest. We were free. And our future was as bright and boundless as the sky above us.